Mini episode 1368 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.com.
The FDH Lounge. You want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the FDH Lounge. This is FDH original dignitary Rick Morris here with my good friend, fellow original FDH Lounge original dignitary Chris Galloway, and we are taking a look at the AFC West. We're going through division by division on the NFL for this season, and again, our big picture stuff was in segment 1 for the AFC East. Go check that out in the first half or so of that segment. Subsequently going through here, I'm setting the table for each division going through. I have from Fantasy Football Draftology 2021 available on the main page at fantasydrafthelp.com and the FDHLounge.com, our fantasy football and non-fantasy football guide for the season. I have our one run-on sentence for each team in the NFL. So I'm going to, division by division, kind of set the table with that. And for the AFC West, I start with Kansas City, of course, because I'm going in my order of predicted finish, and I say for Kansas City, with cap considerations looming, the defense has enough holes to threaten their necessary middle-of-the-pack status, and wide receivers thinner than usual, but with all of that said, the Chiefs still have a floor of making it to the divisional playoffs. LA Chargers, there are still holes defensively on the offensive line and in terms of passing game weapons, but there's enough high-end talent to justify playoff optimism. Las Vegas, the defense needs help at all three levels, and offensive line and wide receiver are not up to snuff, but this team is no stranger to overachieving to reach mediocrity, so the Raiders have a moderate chance to still be relevant at the start of December. Denver, quarterback, remains the obvious question, especially playing in this division, but additional holes in the trenches on both sides of the ball and at linebacker are the true signs that the Broncos will remain in the middle of the rebuild that they refuse to admit that they are in. There's a bona fide run-on sentence there, definitely. So, Chris Galloway, any thoughts here on where you agree or disagree on any of those ones? I'm guessing, as is the case with some of the other divisions, probably largely agreeing.
Yeah, listen, as long as Mahomes is healthy, Kansas City wins the division. They are a 13-4 type of squad, if not 14-3 type of squad. They are going to be the favorite to have home field advantage. And, the only teams that I think can compete to take away that home field advantage, depending on how the cards fall within their divisions, I think are Buffalo and Cleveland. They're the only ones that maybe can wrest it away from them. Now, all this being said, they are the class of the AFC West, and Kansas City's still the class of the AFC until somebody knocks them off.
Yeah.
And for that reason, you've got to have them at the top. And I think you've got it right about the Chargers. I'm very bullish on the Chargers, although I swear to God, I feel like I've been bullish on the Chargers for, a decade.
A lot of us have.
Like
you more than most, but a lot of us have.
This team with a lot of talent that just never seems to put it together.
Right.
And what we saw out of Justin Herbert last year was exciting. The kid's got an arm. He's got talent. Is there a sophomore slump coming with a new system and a new coach? I actually think that they are going to buck the trend of the sophomore slump. I think they're going to go the way of the Cleveland Browns last year with a successful first-year head coach in Brandon Staley, Perry, Ohio, Lake County's own.
There you go.
another local tie-in. I think that they are a 10-win team, and I think that they have enough talent on enough levels to compete with anyone. And so I remain bullish on the Chargers, enough so that and spoiler alert, earmuffs, listeners, if you don't want to know, I'm picking an AFC Championship game of Chargers at Browns.
Ooh,
Spoiler alert.
Okay.
Vegas. I mean, as long as John Gruden's there, as I have said 1,000 times over, it's just going to continue to be a clown show. Hey, we had a good offensive line. Let's blow up the entire offensive line. Okay, great. Smart move there, Chucky. Listen, I can't believe in the Raiders as long as he's there. Does that mean that they could be a 9-8 team? Yeah, I think they kind of are. They're like a 9-8 squad, competing to try, against like the Titans and to try to slide into that seventh spot, and also competing against Denver for that spot. Denver's another team, I think, with a lot of talent at different levels, but with also a bunch of holes, and then that question mark at quarterback. Does a guy like Teddy Bridgewater have enough left in the tank to be someone that can steady the ship and get them over the top into a wild card game? Maybe. But I didn't like what I saw in Carolina.
Right.
I liked what we saw out of him in New Orleans. Different system, better roster. Look what we had in Carolina. I didn't like that Teddy. So what Teddy are we getting? Again, huge question mark. So I see them as sort of an 8-9 team. Possibly 9-8, but probably more 8-9. And the same thing with Las Vegas. If Vegas goes, 7-10 or 8-9, no one's going to bat an eye on that.
Right.
Who's going to go, oh, well, I didn't see that coming. Of course you did. I think both those teams have like a 2-game swing depending on how it works out. And I think this year, damn it, can the Cleveland Browns beat the Raiders this year, for God's sakes?
Right.
I mean, we've had all these games that we've played against them recently, and it's just never gone our way, whether, for one reason or another. So, I think this is the year the Browns beat the Raiders. I think you've probably got that division pretty close in terms of your order. Vegas, Denver. I could see Denver finishing third if they get enough out of Bridgewater. But, I think those two teams are pretty interchangeable. Again, they have talent. Both teams have talent. The Raiders will do what the Raiders always do. They'll start off 6-2, right? And everybody will go, whoa, here they come. And then they'll collapse. I remain not a believer in John Gruden. I didn't believe in him and was furious when Browns fans would pound the table wanting the Browns to hire him.
Right. But he's from Sandusky. You got to hire him.
I think he has a legacy of suck. He has one Super Bowl based on a team that Tony Dungy built. And I think that makes him about as talented a coach as Barry Switzer. I'm just not. I've never been a believer in the guy, and what I've seen in Las Vegas, Oakland, and now Las Vegas is just bias confirmation.
Well, here's what's interesting. Am I remembering incorrectly here? Am I going only prematurely senile, or it was a year or two ago? I could have sworn we were doing the previews here, and you were like, I don't know, man. I might have been a little wrong about Gruden. Like one of these years, it seemed like you were giving him a little more credit.
There was one year that I had a soft moment, and I said on this show, Rick, maybe I was wrong. Boy, I was so steadfast in my dislike of Chucky. And they had that, they had a year that we didn't think they would do much, and they got that was it their 7-9 year maybe?
Yeah,
because I think they had 1 year of 7-9,
right?
Or maybe it was 8-8 where they just missed the playoffs and they they look like they actually, were actually well coached. And I came on this show going into the next season going, God, maybe I was wrong about it. Like questioning myself, saying, but you know what? Hey, listen, I think that shows that I'm the bigger man, that I was willing to question my own steadfast beliefs and say, maybe I was wrong. I wasn't wrong. He stinks. I was right, and I shouldn't have second-guessed myself.
Just the fact that I successfully remembered that you had said that, I'm doing nothing to dispel my dad's increasing belief that I have an overgrown ability to remember the trivial. Just the fact that I can remember you said that from whenever.
Well, I think at the time, too, there was a certain shock value because you knew how much I disliked Chucky.
Well, true. That's true.
And
yes.
I think you were you were somewhat taken aback, if I recall, sort of like,
I was.
Are you actually complimenting him? Are you reversing course? Is this actually happening? And I was like, I might have been too harsh. I have to say, last season they outperformed expectations. Maybe they're onto something. And then of course, you flash forward a couple of years, and it's like, yeah, no.
That's
no. They haven't made the playoffs in 4 years under it. They haven't done anything. I mean,
I find that convincing, Chris. I don't have an overgrown grasp of the trivial. It should have stuck out in my mind because, like you said, it was a memorable moment when you were going back momentarily on what you thought there. And yes, in looking at this division, I have Kansas City winning it at 12-5. The Chargers as a wild card team at 10-7. I have Vegas at 8-9 and Denver at 5-12. Now, I want to go to the Chargers here for a second because to varying degrees, I always like these kind of weird-ass comparisons between different situations or whatever. I look at the Chargers, you might say a really rich man's version of, I would say a slightly rich man's version of, but when you and I are looking at the holes that the Chargers have, but their ability to surmount that, do we both regard them to varying degrees as sort of a rich man's version of the Bengals right now?
They are, except the Bengals have had their coach. They have an advantage of having a coach now for a few years. I think that the Chargers have far more talent on defense. So in that sense, they are a richer man's Bengals.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the Chargers showed us more last year than the Bengals. So from that standpoint, you're right. The Chargers are clearly closer to the promised land in terms of playoffs and competing than the Bengals.
Agree.
So from that standpoint, I don't know if the analogy is exactly correct, but they both have what appear to be outstanding young quarterbacks. And in this league, if you've got great quarterback play, you've got a chance.
You do.
And so I think the Bengals have a better wide receiving core, but I think the Chargers have a far better defense on paper. I would say running game, they're probably evenly matched, although slight advantage to the Chargers because they something smart. They drafted an offensive lineman to protect their investment in Herbert when the Bengals didn't.
Yeah.
So that's going to prove to be the difference in my mind. I was a big Slater fan. I thought the Bengals should have taken him at 3. I know a lot of people were big on Sewell, and I was a Slater guy. We'll see how that pans out long term. Let's talk in 5 years and see if I was right.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the Chargers got it right with their draft pick. And, they both have excellent running backs, but I think because of their pick and because of some of their acquisitions, the Chargers line is better than the Bengals, which is what's going to get them into the playoffs, and that's what's going to keep the Bengals out of the playoffs.
I would kind of agree with that. As far as Staley getting the head coaching job for the Chargers and literally just boxing up his stuff and walking across the hallway, as the case may be, as he goes from the Rams to the Chargers, that had to be a very interesting 5-minute migration of his personal effects, right? But,
Well, you got to keep the same apartment.
True. Yeah. I got that.
In LA, right? Like, why bother? He didn't have to move.
Exactly. He could
stay. He could stay on all the same dating apps he was already on. No,
he can.
No big deal there.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, I could be misspeaking. The man may be married.
You're not implying he's swiping left or anything like that, but I will say too. Glad you reminded me about his hometown being Perry, Ohio. I will gladly sign, Chris Galloway, your change.org petition for him to send home 100% of his paycheck every month so it can replace the old power plant there financially. Fly.
I will tell you that the Perry Joint Fire District thanks him.
Yes. Y'all are going to need it, I hate to say, but a favored son, you can at least take pleasure watching him out there. I agree with you. I think he's going to be a successful head coach as well, and I think, again, the games with Kansas City are going to be very interesting. I think there's a very good chance that these teams end up splitting. And again, I agree with you. The Chargers are not yet on the level of being a legitimate contender to beat Kansas City, but you give it a year or so, and particularly, and again, I continue to focus on this, the continuing effort, of the salary cap in the NFL. It catches up with all the great teams. And I know that when the new TV contract kicks in, it's going to be a big bump, but Kansas City could be a year or two away from really being able to benefit from that in terms of the timing of their team. So as the cap continues to eat into the Chiefs, in a year or two, that may give the Chargers the opportunity to surmount them if they can fill their remaining holes.
Well, I think you're right about that. And I like the Chargers as the year goes on. I like the way their schedule sets up. I like the way they're going to come together with the new coaches, the new system, the talent. If they can stay healthy, Derwin James, we're looking at you.
Yes.
If they can stay healthy, I think the Chargers are one of those teams that gets into the playoffs, and they're one of those squads that nobody wants to play.
They are.
And call back to my earlier spoiler, having them, the plot line of having Staley coming home to play his old team that he used to root for as a kid, to go to the Super Bowl, I think is a real possibility because I like that team moving forward. Also, another spoiler alert because we're doing them, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the mood I'm in.
Okay.
Week 1 on the road, Browns go to Kansas City and they beat KC week 1. And there's 2 reasons I'm going to say they do. One, offensive lines take longer to gel, and the Chiefs basically have 5 new offensive linemen that aren't even all healthy yet. So that's going to be a bit of a problem for them as they learn to play together. And 2, Frank Clark will, probably be in prison or something, So their pass rush will be lacking versus where it may be later in the year. So I think for those 2 reasons, Browns go week 1 to Kansas City and eke out a win, shock the NFL, and put the NFL on notice that hold on now, everybody. The Browns may actually be for real.
Interestingly enough, and I have the Browns at 13-4, the Chiefs at 12-5, but I have that game as one of the Browns' 4 losses for the same reason that a lot of people do, quite frankly, because there's the burden of proof, I think, for this team to come together. You are right, though, when I'm talking about the defensive additions the Browns made. You're right, though, about the Chiefs and the offensive line, and from your lips to God's ears, because that very well could play out, and that would be just absolutely delicious to see it go that way in that scenario there. And again, as far as spoilers go, I will say I have the Browns and the Chiefs as being the 2 teams in the AFC Championship game. And again, I saw the Browns as being a team like you to host the AFC Championship game, so I sort of retrofitted it with the records. If I see the scenario going that way, then the Browns have to have a better record than the Chiefs if I see the Chiefs winning that game. So I see the Chiefs winning that game, but I think there's going to be a rematch coming in January on the North Coast, the frozen tundra, as it were, and that'll be a lot to look forward to there. But you and I will get into explicit playoff predictions in a subsequent segment here. Chris Galloway, thank you so much for your breakdown on the AFC West, and thank you everybody for tuning in to this mini episode of the FDH Lounge.